Okay, welcome back for the second of the three lecture videos on this chapter on maintaining air quality. Now, in the first video, we looked at clean dry air and what was the percentage by volume of each gas in clean dry air. However, now let's turn our attention to polluted air. As we know, due to cars, due to burning of fossil fuels, perhaps also due to other factors such as volcanic eruptions, air may not always be clean. There may be a reason why air becomes polluted. So in this particular lecture, we will be looking at which gases pollute our air, where do they come from, and what are the effects of these gases. So, firstly, air pollution. Air pollution is a condition where air contains a very high concentration of chemicals that may harm living things or damage non living things. So, they might damage monuments, statues, bridges. Okay, so definitely air pollution is not desirable. So, now the focus is on learning the sources and effect. Sources meaning from where. Where do these gases come from? And effects, what happens if these gases were to be in air? Okay, so let's start with the first pollutant, carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide is an atmospheric pollutant which you must have heard of when we went through organic chemistry, because carbon monoxide is formed by incomplete combustion of fossil fuels. And this happens perhaps in the internal combustion engine of cars when there's insufficient oxygen for the petrol to burn. When there's insufficient or limited oxygen, incomplete combustion happens and that forms carbon monoxide, CO. Now, carbon monoxide is actually very, very harmful because it's able to combine with hemoglobin inside our red blood cells. Hemoglobin's main function is to bind to oxygen and transport oxygen around the body. If carbon monoxide were to bind to hemoglobin instead of oxygen, this reduces the amount of oxygen transported to the rest of the human body. So, this could potentially cause the cells and organs in our body to lack oxygen. If the cells were to lack oxygen, the cells will die, and that leads to organ failure eventually. So, carbon monoxide is associated with binding with hemoglobin, and because of this, it reduces the efficiency of oxygen transport around the body. Okay. Now, the next two pollutants, we are going to take them together, sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen. So, first things first, sulfur dioxide is formed when we conduct combustion of sulfur containing fossil fuels. So, what is a common sulfur containing fossil fuel? A common one is coal. So you will notice that countries which burn a lot of coal for power and for warmth tend to have a lot more sulfur dioxide in their air. Okay, this is actually the main man-made source of sulfur dioxide, the combustion or the burning of coal in power plants and factories. However, sulfur dioxide can also be produced by natural sources. Volcanic eruptions release sulfur dioxide into the air. This is because the volcanic lava actually contains quite a lot of sulfur. And at that high temperature, the sulfur can react with oxygen to form sulfur dioxide, which is released into the air when the volcanoes erupt. For the oxides of nitrogen, as the name suggests, oxide of nitrogen means the compounds formed when nitrogen reacts with oxygen. Hence, the main source of oxides of nitrogen is the reaction of nitrogen and oxygen at high temperatures in the engines. And typically, this occurs in cars. So, in the cars, the engines can sometimes reach 800, 900 degrees Celsius. At this high temperature, nitrogen in the air can actually react with oxygen in the air. And this forms the oxides of nitrogen, either NO or NO2 or a mixture of both. Okay. Now, this is the man-made source because it takes place at the high temperature in the engines. However, there is also a natural source that produces oxides of nitrogen, and that's lightning activity. So instead of just high temperature, lightning, which provides the electrical current provides energy for nitrogen and oxygen to react in the air. Okay, so you need to learn the sources, both man-made and the natural sources that produce SO2 and the oxides of nitrogen. But the good thing is both sulfur dioxide and the oxides of nitrogen, they are actually common in the effects they have. So both sulfur dioxide and the oxides of nitrogen, they are considered acidic oxides. And because they are acidic oxides, they can react and dissolve in rainwater to form acid rain. That means the rainwater that falls becomes very strongly acidic. The pH is very, very low. Now, because the rain is acidic, you can think, what will acids react with? You have learned in Sec 3, acids can react with metals. And that's why it will corrode or destroy metal structures. Besides metals, acids can also react with carbonates. So limestone is calcium carbonate. So it's not surprising that acid rain would affect and corrode limestone structures as well. Because limestone is carbonate, it will react with acids. And over time, the structures will become weakened due to the reaction with the acid rain. So this is the main polluting effect of sulfur dioxide and the oxides of nitrogen. They are acidic oxides, so they form acid rain, which will corrode the limestone and metal structures. Now, in this table, I have also listed methane, unburnt hydrocarbons, and ozone. Now, of these three, which you have to also know and read, let's learn more about methane. Now, methane is an increasingly dangerous gas around us. It's produced mainly by decay of animal and plant matter, as well as from digestion of food by cows and sheep. So you can imagine in agriculture, when people rear cows and sheep, that actually releases a lot of methane. So methane gas, how is it dangerous? Methane gas is dangerous because it's a very potent, a very powerful greenhouse gas. Methane is much more powerful as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. As you learn in lower secondary science, greenhouse gases cause global warming and climate change. So methane is also a greenhouse gas that causes global warming and climate change. Now, let's move on to the next part of this lecture where we zoom in onto acid rain. So, as mentioned just now, acid rain is a problem and is caused by acidic oxides like SO2, NO2. Both SO2 and NO2 are acidic oxides. How do we know this? Now, we learned last year in Sec 3, oxides can be divided into basic, amphoteric, acidic, neutral. So, SO2 and NO2 are acidic oxides because they are non-metal oxides. Sulfur is a non-metal, nitrogen is also a non-metal, and therefore these two oxides are acidic. If they are acidic, it means that they dissolve in water to form acidic solutions. In this case, they dissolve in rainwater, and this forms acid rain. Now, acid rain is very, very strongly acidic. Typically, acid rain has a pH below 4. That's really low. Normal unpolluted rainwater is about pH 5.5 to 6. So you can imagine the pH levels are very different. In acid rain, you're talking about a pH that's less than 4. It's a lot more acidic. And because it's a lot more acidic, it will corrode limestone, which is made of calcium carbonate, and metal structures. Now, how is acid rain formed and what are the equations we can use to explain this? So let's use sulfur dioxide as an example first. SO2 is sulfur dioxide gas. It dissolves and reacts with H2O, water, and this forms H2SO3. We just simply add up the formula. Now, H2SO3 is an acid as well. It's called sulfurous acid. Okay? You might be more familiar with H2SO4. So what happens is step 1, you form H2SO3. Step 2, the H2SO3 is oxidized to H2SO4, which you are more familiar with. H2SO4 is the formula for sulfuric acid. So in the presence of oxygen, sulfurous acid is oxidized to sulfuric acid. Now, for the 4E students doing O level, let's try to look at step 2 more closely and let's try to explain the redox. In particular, let's try to work out the oxidation states of sulfur in H2SO3 and H2SO4. You might want to pause the video here for a short while for you to work out the oxidation state of sulfur. Okay, so I hope you have paused the video for a short while and had some chance to work out the oxidation state of sulfur. You will notice the oxidation state of sulfur in H2SO3 is +4, whereas the oxidation state of sulfur in H2SO4 is +6. So you can see that the oxidation state of sulfur has increased from +4 to +6. And therefore, we can say that H2SO3 is oxidized as the oxidation state of sulfur increased from +4 in H2SO3 to +6 in H2SO4. Okay, so you must be able to draw links between the topics. So over here, I am making a link between this topic on air and the previous chapters on redox. Okay, so you must be able to work out the oxidation states of sulfur and hence conclude from this that H2SO3 is indeed oxidized. All right. Now, shown here in step number 3 is the equation for nitrogen dioxide. Now, this is actually also a redox reaction. If you were to look at the oxidation state of nitrogen, you would notice that for step 3, the oxidation state of nitrogen increased from +4 to +5. So NO2 is actually also oxidized when it reacts with rainwater to form HNO3, nitric acid. Okay, so you can see the main acids in acid rain are actually sulfuric acid and nitric acid. Both are very strong acids, and that's why acid rain has a pH that's so low, below 4. All right. So this is actually a good point for us to revise the chapter on redox as well. So if you are a bit lost how to calculate the oxidation states of sulfur and nitrogen, please approach your subject teachers so that they may explain it to you once more. And finally, the harmful effects of acid rain. So as mentioned, acid rain is very, very acidic and therefore it corrodes limestone. Limestone is calcium carbonate. Marble is also calcium carbonate. Because they are carbonates, they react with the acid. Besides carbonates, metal structures also are corroded by acid rain. Next, acid rain, because it's acidic, it causes nutrients to be leached and lost from the soil. Okay, leach means the nutrients flow away, they escape, they are lost from the soil. Okay, and in the process, acid rain also produces Al3 plus ions, aluminum ions, which are toxic to plants. And finally, when the acid rain falls into the rivers or the lakes, that lowers the pH of the lakes and rivers. And you can imagine the fishes, the shellfish, they will not be able to survive in this overly acidic water. Okay, so these are the main harmful effects of acid rain, which you will need to know. Okay, now acid rain is a chapter that is good for drawing links with our previous chapters like redox, like acids and bases. So if you have not fully understood acid rain, let's use this opportunity to revise both acid rain and our previous chapters like redox and acids. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the second video. Please also watch the third video that's coming up on the carbon cycle. Thank you.